will the patients still be required to show their 215 and become a member of the business to keep the closed loop that the Attorney General required in 2008? Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. All right, Max. Then we have Ryan Hill and Michelle Mallory. And I'm trying to get someone to help us with the microphone. I understand some of you in the back are having a hard time hearing. All right, Max. Ready? Maybe in the front. Okay.
At the front, you're saying? The front like this?
Yeah.
Hello?
Let's try. How's that?
I don't know.
Okay, let's get started.
Okay, sure. Sorry. Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Wow, yeah, I haven't been back here since junior high graduation. This is just as stressful, actually. What did Miss Jones think? Okay. So first of all, thank you all for coming up here. I first met you, Chief Ajax, a little over a year ago. Oh, great, thank you. Now everyone can hear my nasal tone from the back. So I'd just like to say thank you. We've really come a long way, a lot of great progress. There's, a lot of excitement around cannabis being regulated in the state for a lot of people, particularly for patients and for smaller operators. But, there's a but coming, of course. That's why I'm here. I will give a more detailed report on my comments, but just to say in broad sense, the goals of the regulation, public safety and bringing more operators into a regulated market, these things go hand in hand. Absolutely, right? We want to have more people who are coming in, less people who are operating in an unregulated or black market way. But with all that excitement, I feel like there's also a risk of focusing too much on investment and new jobs created and not enough on the local cost. The local cost to Humboldt's economy could be really huge. I mean, cannabis is to Humboldt as the auto industry was to Detroit. We cannot mess this up for us. And I know that that's not falling entirely on your bureau, but it is something which is really important to this community. A lot of people think of the growers as having huge mansions or making a lot of money, but that's just not the reality. The majority of operators are, working class people who are trying to supplement their income so that they can, take care of their kids. And that was a lot of my neighbors growing up here. And so I feel that a lot of them are not going to be able to overcome the barriers to entry, particularly, having high fees or very high cost of compliance. If we were able to start at a lower level of not only fees, but if we can start with the lowest possible barrier to entry for smaller operators, particularly for general licensing requirements, I think that could be very helpful. I think generally easier would be better and more effective in accomplishing that goal of this place. Again, I just want to say we really can't afford to mess it up. I mean, you look at our household income, we're like the third or fourth lowest county in the state. You look at our mortality rate, and it's like 3 times for drug use, and CDC has like 3 times the state average. You look at dropout rates. You look at all of these measures, and it really shows the poverty here. And I really feel that people may be underestimating just how important these small operators in this industry really have been in keeping this place afloat, especially as we've had decreasing jobs in timber or dairy, etc. So again, thank you for coming here. Thank you for hearing my comment. I'll submit a more detailed comment, but I really hope that we can do all we can to get as many people in the door, and then you can start to maybe make the regulatory requirements a little bit more stringent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Max. All right, Ryan Hill. Then we have Michelle Mallory and Mencken. Right.
Chief Ajax, I want to thank you for coming down here. As a veteran and a cannabis user for myself with PTSD and other combat-related injuries, really appreciate what the state of California is doing for this market. My comments are related to the security requirements. Currently, under Section 128, it says it's pretty vague about what the minimum security requirements are to deter access, prevent loss, prevent theft. One of the things that we've seen in the security industry is that the cannabis organizations that are in Southern California or the Central Valley or the Salinas Valley those cultivation operations have a different model than what's appropriate up here for Humboldt County, simply based on geography. So securing those facilities, keeping the bad people out, and keeping the product good and whole and safe will work for an indoor cultivation facility or manufacturing facility that's in a very flat area to where you can see everywhere, is different than when you're growing up and when you have a garden up in the hills or up on the mountains. So I would like to see there be more specific language addressing the different geographies for cultivation businesses to help protect the growers up here in Humboldt, because it's a different model than what works for an indoor cultivation facility or someone who's cultivating outdoors in the Central or the Salinas Valley. So another thing that I would like the state to consider to help the small growers or the garden growers is the cost for implementing security protocols or distribution protocols is an extremely hefty cost from how things have been doing to what's going to be proposed underneath AUMA, which is actually hurting smaller growers or smaller operations from being able to keep their doors open. So I know that 280 is not going to be changed anytime soon. That's at the federal level. But I would like the state to consider being able to offer fiscal breaks for any implementations dealing with environmental controls, environmental regulations, security regulations, because the state is now requiring people who are delivering good legal cannabis to the medicinal and recreational market in the state of California. We're putting more regulations on them that is going to make it more difficult for the people that have been delivering craft cannabis and quality cannabis for the medical market all this time. It's going to make it more difficult for them to keep their doors open without giving them a financial break for implementing things that are required to be regulatory compliant and still get a valuable product to the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. For those of you who came in late, if you want to make an oral comment, if you could please add your name at the desk in the back with CJ, that'd be great. All right, Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Mallory, and I'm a state detective from the Cannabis Testing Lab here in Eureka. I know my section is coming up later this afternoon, but my comments are actually on dispensaries. The first one is in reference to page 7, initial statement of reasons. And it talks about a grace period is provided to allow a smooth transition to the state regulatory system. Dispensaries can sell medical cannabis goods that have not been tested as required by MCRSA for 180 days after licensure if a label is affixed to the package with the date of the sale and the phrase, "This product has not been tested," under the Medical Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act. I would like for you to clarify if this date is 180 days after January 1st, 2018, or is it 180 days after the dispensary acquires a state license? If it is the latter, I would like a clarification on how long the dispensary has to acquire a license after January 2018. My second comment is in reference to Table 3, page 116, also initial statement of reasons. This one talks about the estimated compliance cost per pound of alternative regulatory packages. Compliance costs for proposed regulations are stated as $524 per pound, but testing in proposed regulations is estimated to cost $1,350 per test. I'd like to see a clarification on what a test means. What is a clarification of that word? Does a test mean 10 pounds? And is $524 the increased cost per pound, or is it the total cost? So just some clarification around those statements. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. We have Mencken, then we have Allison Edrington, and then Paul Hagan. All right, hi.
Hi, my name is Mencken Nelson. I do administrative assistant work for several growers in the area.
Sorry, could you slow down a little
sure.
bit? Thank you.
My name is Mencken Nelson. I do administrative assistant work for several growers in the area who are going through compliancy. And pretty much what I was going to say has already been covered by the previous two gentlemen. But I think we need to focus on the cost of setup for shutting down small local farms versus kind of like gearing it towards big business. A good example of that is that there's no actual fee set up for a producing dispensary, which is going to be the largest operation out there. It's a mix of several others. And then again with the lab testing, I know that's also later, but I think that when we consider the specs for the lab testing, it needs to be in alignment with another agricultural business that's already out there. Like, it is being so much stricter on medical cannabis than it is on, for example, tobacco. And it seems like that doesn't make a lot of sense, so. And that's it.
Thank you. Thanks, Megan. Next we have Allison Edrington, Paul Hagan, and Ross Gordon.
Hello, my name is Allison Edrington, and I live in Fortuna, and I have a few comments. I am the comment on requiring cannabis goods to pass through a distributor prior to being sold to patients at dispensaries. There's possibilities for tourism that has been discussed and that other states have taken on, and I think that will damage it, especially for Humboldt County and the Emerald Triangle overall. I also wanted to comment on the medical cannabis childproofing. There's been a lot of comments from patients that for products like salves, they can't open them because often they're taking them for arthritis, and those childproof caps, especially on the salve containers, make it difficult. So if there's some sort of change that can be made for that, I think that would be beneficial for patients. On the management of commercial cannabis businesses, being a person is an owner if they participate in the direction, control, or management of the commercial cannabis business. I'm not clear if that's, like, is that lower management, upper management, board of directors? Maybe that's clarified and I didn't catch that, but I think clarification on that would be good. On the convictions and potentially being a reason to deny somebody, I will point out that will disproportionately affect people of color. Not only because they're more likely to have contact with law enforcement on a day-to-day basis, but also because it's generally harder for people of color to get financing, so may be more likely to have financial problems that way. And but I do like several parts about how things are moving forward. And I do want to note that we're taking on a pretty great infrastructure project in Humboldt County between all the farms with the roads, and I don't know how we're going to afford all of that. So I don't, and with that, especially without financial backing from bank institutions and things like that. Speaking of banking institutions, bonds are also something that cannabis businesses have trouble getting, and so including those in regulations will make it difficult for people to comply. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison. Paul Hagan. Paul. Oh, thank you. Hi.
Good morning. Thanks for coming. My name is Paul Hagan, and I appreciate very much that you're coming here and doing the listening tour. I'm an environmental lawyer. I've been doing regulatory compliance in one form or another since 1989, living here on the North Coast since 1999. I understand what you're doing. I commend you. You've been here before. It's a large task. I have several specific code sections I'd like to point out with some constructive suggestions, and I'll be submitting something in writing later on. So on the proposed regs, you've got, starting one article, you've got 8,000, you've got several definitions. The ones I'd like to point out most clearly are M, Q, S, and T. They are indoor, mixed light, nursery, and outdoor. And this is really of fundamental importance. The various counties are adopting different definitions of outdoor in their own ordinances, particularly here in Humboldt, followed by Mendocino and Trinity, as well as elsewhere. And if you change the definition of what any of these 3 or 4 things, including nursery, is, you can really fundamentally change an operation in terms of the infrastructure they built and all the stuff that we've got. So I think it's pretty good the way it is. It's just clear. Outdoor doesn't use anything but natural light. Indoor only uses artificial light and mixed lights in the middle, and stay away from the light depth stuff and wattages. At 8102, your application requirements, some of these are pretty onerous and detailed. In particular, if you look at B10, that's a secret conformance. That's a local jurisdiction. They have to provide the evidence for that, and kind of puts it on the applicant. In particular, 8102B11 is secret conformance, and that would have everybody do at least a notice of exemption, or perhaps a
Can you slow down just a little?
beg your pardon. So 8102B11 would have everyone do a secret conformance of some type if their local jurisdiction hasn't done it, and that would be enormously burdensome. it could kill lots of things. We have big problems here in Humboldt, everywhere, on the CEQA stuff. Moving on to 8204 section, you've got a 4-acre maximum total. That's difficult. Here in Humboldt, we have more than that already. 8206 is about multi-tenant entry. It's a little overkillish. Article 3 in general, you're going to hear this, the license fees, death by 1,000 cuts, death by 1,000 cuts. The small farmers, the indoor growers with the electrical burden that we're having to rebuild the county infrastructure, things like that. It's really, really hard on the small growers, especially artisans. Be careful of death by 1,000 cuts. Lastly, I'd comment on Article 4, 8305G, which is about composting. I think you need to make it clear that composting is an option on site, and that only if you convert into the solid waste stream to the landfill do you have to do all that stuff there. And again, we need to, do we have a license cap statewide? Is there a license number cap statewide? That needs to be clarified. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Next up, we have Ross Gordon, Nick Hughes, and then Hannah Nelson. Hi, Ross.
Hi, I'm here on behalf of the CCI Manufacturing Committee, and on behalf of CCI, I want to thank the Bureau for all of your hard work on this. I know it's a lot to do and not very much time for a really big cannabis market, and so really appreciate your work. Being here on behalf of the Manufacturing Committee and speaking to sort of the distribution issues and transportation issues that the Bureau is tasked with in this context. A lot of our comments sort of focus on workability or sort of technical issues with proposed regulations, and those are technical issues that seem like they're intended to protect public safety in some way, and probably are intended to do that, but in our opinion don't have clear benefits to public safety, and I think it's important to keep in mind.
Could you slow down just a little?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to keep in mind that when a regulation goes into place and it doesn't have a clear public safety justification, that's really a burden that's on patients, on small businesses, and that really encourages the black market. So there are real costs to regulations that don't, achieve their intended goal. So just to briefly mention 3 that we've noted that we don't think have quite sufficient justification. First is the remediation of manufactured cannabis batches, which is section 5102 in the regulations. The regulations allow for harvested batches to be remediated, but not manufactured batches. In the initial statement of reasons, the claim is that for a manufactured batch, because it's concentrated, that it must be difficult to remediate. We think that's something that should be determined case by case, noting that a manufactured batch could fail testing because of something like too high or too little potency. And if it's something like a chocolate bar, that can be melted down and remediated without too much trouble, so we think that there shouldn't be a mandated destruction of a batch simply because it doesn't pass a test. A second issue is packaging, and this is something that the Bureau would need to work with the Department of Public Health on. Right now there's sort of a duplicative packaging system. There's packaging that's required for the manufacturer and then packaging that's required at the dispensary level for exit packages, which is exit packages, what y'all are sort of tasked with. And currently on manufactured products at the manufacturing level, they need to be resealable. But the Bureau then says that if it's a manufactured product, it does not need to be put in a resealable exit bag at the dispensary level. We think the Bureau should be moving towards universal exit bags, and rather than putting that resealability requirement on the manufacturer, that should move to the dispensary level. That would reduce the burden on a lot of small manufacturers, would be more environmentally sustainable, and would help out patients with less overall costs. And the last thing is there's a prohibition on returns of defective product. If it's not for identical product, we don't really understand the reasons for that. We think the Bureau should take a look at that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. And just a reminder that our court reporter is typing as fast as she can, so if you could just slow down a little bit for her. All right, Nick, hello.
My name is Nick Hughes. I'm from Cathedral City, California. I drove a long way to get here. I have a lot of issues with the way that you've laid out the current licensing. First of all, you set a date for priority being January 5th or January 1st, 2016. I'm licensed in the city of Cathedral City. They've vetted me. They've done probably 90% of what you've done, licensed, fingerprinted, everything that you've done. Also, I have an issue with your seed-to-sale tracking systems. I assume that a tracking system will be set up by the state. The state will have a barcode and check all of this through some type of system. Several of these systems have been hacked, and I don't really want my manifests or any detail of my employees or any of my product put into a system that could potentially be hacked, whether it's MJ Freeway or whatever system is out there. Also, a lot of other retail other than dispensaries in the area of Southern California have been offered licenses from the state. An example would be cigarette outlets. They don't have to have the same security that we have. I mean, where my dispensary is in Cathedral City, it looks like a jail cell. I mean, we have to put up heavy bars. We have to be prepared for anything, people coming through the ceiling. And that's the way it is in the larger cities. And at most of the bigger cities that have dispensaries, but it's now being offered to cigarette and also compounding pharmacies. Also, distribution in Southern California, it has already been offered, as far as I know, to the liquor distributors. We don't look at that as supporting the little guy. I mean, we're really smaller farms up here, up north here, smaller dispensaries down south. We're not looking to be the CVS of marijuana. We're looking to be just business people. And this is an up-and-coming business. We're small businessmen. We want to take advantage of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Hi, Hannah. And then after Hannah, we have Richard Lemon.
Hi, my name is Hannah Nelson. First, I want to make a couple of general comments. I think that about things that I see that are not in the regulations that would be helpful to have clarified. One is something about compassionate care programs. I understand that the law requires that no cannabis be given away under the Adult Use Act, but I'm not sure that the Safety Act actually had those provisions. But anyway, at some point there needs to be a development of compassionate care programs. A lot of dispensaries and other providers want to be able to provide a certain percentage of their products to people who are in need and who are sick. So if there's could be a way to fit that in. Also, the integration of the Adult Use Act eventually, I know we're not at that point, there will be emergency regs promulgated, but really the way in which those regulations are going to be integrated severely affect how people are setting themselves up now to get ready to apply. And so if there could just be a thoughtful process about what is this going to trigger in terms of somebody having to do something entirely different when they've been preparing for this set of regs. They may not, they're so buried in the local jurisdictions regulations as well as preparing for these regulations that they're not able to see 3 steps ahead, like some people, to go, oh wait, we can't finalize this part because it might be changing. So anything that can be done to keep that in mind would really be appreciated. I think also there needs to be a distinction between rural and urban areas in everything that is looked at with respect to regulations. There's a really big difference between the infrastructure requirements and capabilities in rural areas than in urban areas. Everything from internet to road access to hiring a security guard, you know, it really, or even in small villages where there are dispensaries that may not want to have the jail bar dispensary type thing. So I think that if there's a way to, whether it's by designating to the local jurisdictions what they would prefer to have in terms of certain requirements, that would be at a minimum what these regs would require, or something like that. Previous speaker mentioned that it would be nice to have a for-profit clarification. I echo that. I also have some concerns about the way that owner is defined, and really the issue has to do with the control of somebody who's working there. You know, small operations, they need to have their employees do various aspects of the job, including contract for the services or whatever. The way it's defined, on the one hand, a 19% owner of shares wouldn't be an owner, but an employee who has to do multitasking is, and that's not fair. Likewise, the issue of priority standing,
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you. I just want to say, especially Hannah, if you have more that you want to say after we get through the speakers, we can re-queue. Yeah. Okay, Richard, hi.
It looks like I'm going to be the angry man here today. I'm the Human Rights Commissioner from Fortuna, and I'm very concerned about children. I just spoke to the principal at Fortuna High School yesterday, or 2 days ago. He has problems with kids coming to high school with marijuana, edible marijuana, and e-cigarettes. And there's just not enough being done to stop that. And I don't know how I can possibly, well, I'll begin. We have people growing marijuana right next to their fence lines in Fortuna. I personally met a man who has 3 neighbors, and their marijuana plants for medical marijuana are growing in their backyard and hanging over his fence. That's not right. There should be a setback of marijuana plants that people have, so that we had a story in Fortuna where a horse was eating marijuana from somebody's plants, and the woman tried to get the woman to cut it back. She got her, what do you call it, not a chainsaw, but a weed eater. She went out and cut the marijuana plants back herself so that her horse couldn't have it. Well, if it's that easy for a horse to get at, it's certainly easy for children to get at. And we've got to do something about that. And people, if they're going to, that just makes me so angry that we're allowing this stuff to be so accessible to children. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Sean Trainer, and then we have Sequoia Hudson. Sean Trainer.
Good morning. Thanks for coming. We know it's an arduous task you're up to. Sean Trainer with Sensing Valley. Wanted to just run through this pretty quick for everybody. In section 5000B purchase, please define the term consideration or the basis for this term. Section X, quarantine, please provide the procedures for inside quarantine for returns. Section BB, please define Title II and explain how the title process is going to play out. Title 5004, please define security interest. 5006, C, these are onerous tasks for small growers and grower groups. This might work good for your 1 million square foot facility in San Francisco, but for a bunch of small farmers and a bunch of small business people, these are onerous tasks. And we should just probably remove those. In 21 in that, this is, again, more data that's just busy work. 5010 premises, those are good definitions. Thank you for defining them as such. 5022, again, this is onerous work. Please reduce these requirements. We're being crushed here by an avalanche of minuscule regulatory body work. 5039C, please make a path for the licensees to be transferable. It's kind of ridiculous if we have businesses that are established and somebody wants to move that business into another family person's name or another business, we have to go through this whole arduous process again. It would be much better if there was some type of transfer program. And we will make an offering on that in our public comment. 5048, the physical modification of premises. Again, this is busy work. These are all local jurisdiction land use issues and should be held in that, so we ask that you remove that section. Title 5050, we're moving into the track and trace now. And there's a term, licensee representatives. Not sure really where that is, but we're looking at it from a third party that's helping provide tools and resources to small business people. Does that qualify you as a licensee representative to be able to provide assistance in aggregated reporting back to the Bureau? Again, I have some more, but we'll get to it in our written comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Appreciate it.
All right, Sequoia Hudson, and then after that we have Bowie, and then Dr. Rogers.
Hi, thank you for coming today and giving us the opportunity to speak with you, and thank you for all the hard work you all are doing in developing these regulations and creating a pathway for the multiple businesses in California. I just have a couple technical comments, I guess. One of them has to do with the track and trace. I know there's a lot of unknown about what that is going to be and how it's going to work, you know, the intent. I'm hoping that it will be a mechanism for actually inventory control management and even financial reporting, so that businesses aren't having to do multiple data entry points and multiple systems of facilitating that ability of information, of generating information. And then also, I don't know if there's been any kind of timeline introduced as far as when that's going to be decided, what it's going to be and when it's going to be available, so that we have time to actually learn and train and implement that program within our operations. I want to reiterate what the gentleman just said about 5039C and the transfer of licenses. It definitely is problematic, especially for simple changes within ownership, specifically if there's a person that withdraws from a business, and maybe not necessarily any change in anything other than someone deciding to follow a different path in their life. From a personal experience in another licensed industry, we had something happen to us where we had someone withdraw and we had to reapply for a license, and it took 9 months to get our new license, and we were unable to operate for that 9 months, and we were already an existing business with employees, and part of that had to do with like fingerprinting, background checks. There was just stuff that had to go on. And then our new license, a lot of stuff is dependent on your license number, your credit history, your business activity, your bonding is based on your license. And if you're having to get a new license, all of that goes away, and you don't have the ability to retain that history of your business if you're having to then get a new license. So I'd like there to be some kind of ability to maybe have some ministerial changes done without having to actually apply for a new license. It could be very costly. Let's see. Also, I did hear a comment, this has to do with cultivation CDFA, but the 8000Q section about mixed light, I think it's really critical to understand that light deprivation is not necessarily mixed light. It's not using light, it's just pulling a tarp. And from what I understand, the intent is that they're assuming that you're getting multiple harvests, and there should be a higher tax, and there's a lot of taxes based on these different tiers. And cultivators are not necessarily getting multiple harvests, they're just getting an earlier harvest, and not necessarily getting more. So I'd like there to be some kind of adjustment as to light deprivation not being included in mixed light. Thank you.
Bowie, and then Dr. Rogers.
Hello, my name is Bowie. I took a day off of work to come visit with y'all. But it's a barren day, so that's good. So you guys must have planned ahead on that. Not a good day for planting. But you said there's a lot of people here, but supposedly there's tens of thousands of growers in Humboldt, and I only see about 100 people here, and not all of them are farmers. So with that said, there's a huge lack of trust when it comes to bureaucracy and regulations. And it would be a lot easier, and you would create and retain a lot more revenue if it was easier to reach compliance. Top priorities, I feel, with regulating marijuana and medical marijuana is public safety, environmental protection, community, and local and state economy. As far as security cameras, it should be based on the size of property. The property that we currently work on could do fine with about 5 cameras. But somebody who has maybe a processing facility as well as 20 acres, 4 acres of canopy might need the 20 cameras. If the state wants track and trace, rather than adding another expense to the farmer, I think the state should take care of that cost with the UID or whatever the software you want to use. When it comes to medical versus recreational, I know we're just talking about medical, but with the 407 increase per unit per pound, it would be beneficial that when recreational comes about, that it also gets tested. So if patients don't want to pay for the increase, then they could just go the recreational route. So we need a prevention when it comes to that, because I don't even think we test food that intensively. As far as this gentleman's concerns, education is helpful as far as getting the kids moving in a different direction. And the sooner we move it into legalization, like in other countries, Amsterdam for instance, actually the use of cannabis went down once it was legalized. And then maybe it increased at first, but then it... And as far as growing outdoor, the mixed light, it'd be best. I know we're talking about other things right now, but parts per million would be better than parts per billion, because anything grown under the sun and in living soil, which is what we need to grow delicious vegetables, kind cannabis, the microorganisms need to be thriving. So there's that. And as far as small farmers, a lot of us are do-it-yourselfers. So it'd be nice to have the ability to be a nursery, not just for our own property, but for external, and also opening it up to transporter licenses, because again, that's another cost that small farmers may not be able to incur. Last thing, moving towards energy and efficiency and self-reliance. We all want to be on solar, we all want to have our own water catchment, water filtration off the grid as much as possible, but as far as the generator aspect of the laws, that needs to be changed, because some people live on generators out here, and especially if you're doing mixed light, you need. Thank you.
Thank you, Bowie. They were doing some roof work today, so they're with us. Dr. Rogers.
Good morning, panel. I'm grateful to be here. I'm unemployed, so I have nothing to do. So basically, I wanted to tell you my experience as far as patients' access to medical cannabis in Shasta County, which I've actually written to you about, to your panel. In Shasta County, there are no outdoor grows. And so what happened is when Shasta County banned out all outdoor grows, Tehama County has no outdoor grows. And so what happened was that Shasta Lake became the only source where medical cannabis patients could go get their cannabis. And Jamie Kerr from the 530 Collective proposed a 10% pot tax. So there was a quid pro quo where Jamie got placed on the planning commission, stacked it with 3 or 5 planning commissioners, and then regulated themselves. So what they decided, they found morality or ethics, and said we can only limit dispensaries to 3 total dispensaries serving a patient population of 250,000. And that was just a sham. The real reason was they wanted to create a monopoly, and they doubled the price of cannabis to $6,400 per pound. So 30% of my patients have no access. They're forced to go to the black market. And a recent UC Davis study showed that cannabis contaminated with fungus and pesticides in susceptible immunocompromised patients like the elderly, anybody on steroids, anybody that has an autoimmune disease, anybody with cancer can develop a fungal pneumonia and die. Recently, Merle Haggard died of pneumonia. It would be interesting to see on an analysis of his fluids in the lung as a former surgical pathologist whether he died of a fungal pneumonia. My proposal is to enter into direct contracts with farmers directly, like a futures system where you guarantee them a price. And there are going to be certain times when, because of mold or other issues, that they can't bring in that crop. So what's the farmer supposed to do? Starve? So I think the Bureau should completely cut out the retail dispensaries, because in my county, there's a 1,200% markup. And that 10% tax It's not taken in by the dispensary owner. It's passed on to the consumer. So these are very, very greedy, cash-hungry people that do not care about patient access. I sent a 75-year-old lady with Parkinson's disease who shuffled into the dispensary and they charged her full price.
Thank you, Dr.
So
Rogers.
eliminate the retail dispensaries, enter into future contracts directly with the organic farmer, pay them a much higher price, and eliminate taxes. There's no tax differential between a medical or retail patient. Medical patients are given
All right,
7%
we have Anna
tax.
Romanowski
And that
and Ron
basically
Hennis.
eliminates any advantage. There's a 20% differential in Oregon, and there's
Thank
nothing.
you. Thank
So
you. Please.
eliminate the retail
Yield the
dispensaries.
floor. Thank you. We have Anna Romanowski, sorry, and then Ron Hennis.
Hi, thank you for having us today. I actually traveled from down in the Bay and Mendocino, but just wanted to make a few comments. Number one, regarding sustainability, I know that we can all expect a number of different changes with regard to packaging. It happens all the time in Denver. It's excessive with regard to the cost to the business or individual that's having to be producing that packaging. If you make a change and then required to change within 72 hours or even 2 weeks, you've lost hundreds or
Slow down
thousands.
just a little, sorry.
Excuse me, hundreds or thousands of dollars complying with maybe a font size that then has changed. So I think we need to really be conscious and aware of the way that we are looking at packaging with regard to sustainability. I think exit packaging is a really easy capture. Whatever the dispensary or the manufacturers do is one thing, but as a consumer with exit packaging, just very the same as you bring your bags to the grocery store. You know, I'm not from here. I can get plastic bags in South Carolina, but I can't even buy them here. I'd like to see the same thing implemented with dispensaries with exit packaging to start, and then see that progress forward as we get a little stronger with the way that we want that packaging to look within the scope of regulation and compliance. I also wanted to talk a little bit about enforcement and what that looks like once all these licenses come through. I did have a question about the appeal process. You know, we're all talking about licensing right now. That's great, that's cool. What happens when you get denied? What does that appeal process look like at the county level? What does that appeal process look like at the state level? And how far does that go? So that was an unanswered question. Again, back to enforcement, I know that Mendocino County in particular has instituted a third-party assessor program that seems to have some success with having farmers come through and trust that they're going to have the eyes of an independent advocate for results, not an advocate for the county or the government, not an advocate for the farmer, but a true third party that you know, would come in and assess what they see so that you don't really have any skin in the game, which would kind of address the issue of trust with letting people on these properties that, you know, as a certified real estate appraiser, I've not quite seen anything like it where, you know, neighbors just agree to property lines and they don't even have these properties surveyed. It's very seldom that I can even find a plat within the last decade for any of these grow operations in Redwood Valley or many of these areas that are rural and have been historically used for cannabis growing operations. You don't get on these properties, they don't survey them. It makes it really difficult to draw a site plan when I don't even have current surveys to draw from. And then, you know, the last thing, I know we talk a lot about track and trace. Please don't use other states as a model entirely. Please don't use Colorado as a model. I lived there. I worked in the industry for a year. Please do not use that track and trace system as the only model. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. All right, we have Ron Hennis, then Brooke Brebix, and Matt Michael. Sorry if I'm saying your name wrong.
Hello, hi, my name is Ron Hennig. I wish to address the stigma that cannabis has been given by the legal authorities, the people in power, who know nothing about it, who don't consume it. I wonder how many people of your board consume it, grow it, deal with it in any way. Are they really knowledgeable of what they are doing? I've heard reports on the internet and newspaper about people showing up at hospital emergency wards. Great influx of these people. They never say what happens to these people. I've called up, I've tried to find out. There was a doctor, Dan Colby from UC Davis Emergency. I tried to call him. I've been in contact with UC Davis Emergency, left my name. They know me down there. They have not returned my call as to what happens to a person that shows up the UC Davis medical ward. Everybody, all the operators, when I talk to them about that question, they say, "What? Are you kidding me?" People that use it know what it does to them. There's no reason for exploiting this emergency room scene as being detrimental. It's largely people who are not used to what happens to you when you consume cannabis. It's like the first time I took booze. I didn't know what it was like. I was mixing drinks for a friend of mine who was going in the Army, and I've never drunk anything in a couple sips of beer. I was drinking all kinds of stuff to see what it tastes like. I wound up in his bed, throwing up all over the room. It was my ignorance of booze that got me there. It's the same with people that don't have any knowledge of what happens to you. I'm saying it's been poorly stigmatized. It needn't have all these regulations that you're doing. It's become a revenue stream for the state, and that's all. It needn't be that way. You know, give us a break is what I'm saying. This law creates crime. You're trying to eliminate it. So make the law more knowledgeable about what you're dealing with rather than stigmatize it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Brooke Brevin, then Matt Michael and Lelena Dubois.
Hi. I'm Brooke Michael. I'm just going to start with a question. When AUMA comes out, does this eliminate the ability for workers to both work for people who run under AUMA or MRSA? Addressing Title 5068, let's please make this 7 days or have the Bureau provide some data backup. Under Article 7, returns and destruction, there's no protocols for the sold and returned. Where do we get these protocols to ensure no foul play? Title 5080, cannabis waste management. 72 hours is far too long for any business. Taxes have already been paid and tracked. There's no need for this frame. Title 5086, distributors should be held to the same standards as other licensees. Article 5175, there are no operational procedures listed. Please provide guidance on these. And Title 5187, please provide the ability to use e-commerce tools for delivery. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Matt Mikkel? We will. Hi.
Okay, so I'm going to stutter a lot, but here we go. Entry into the regulatory process, somewhere around $60,000 to $200,000 currently. You guys aware of that? That's a lot of money. Anyways, that's about 2 to 6 years gross salary. The problem is there's no way to get financed. I'm not aware of any financing available for cannabis farmers. So I propose that you guys set up a banking system within your department to, help people, small farms, since there is no other legal way to do it other than the black market or something to that effect. Point number 2, I'd like to see anybody that's getting a license and throwing in taxes, maybe like 51% share where the taxes go, because up here, we like to give it back to our community and enriching programs and such, even if we do it under the table, or our local business and this and that. It should be nice to know that it's not going into a giant pool and getting sucked dry by somewhere else. Small farm, I want to be able to share. As a small farmer, I want to be able to share my medicine with people that need it. Whether it be this gentleman over here, anybody that has low income that can't afford these, I want to be able to share. It's that simple. It's not I know we're talking about money and commercial operations and such, but if I can't share, then what am I doing it for? To the gentleman that self-described old man, thank you for actually standing up and addressing your concerns, because that's really why I'm participating, so we can talk about everybody's perspective on it. So we can get rid of the, like a better word, the stereotypes involved with it. We can address things like children and cannabis and how are they getting their hands on it. So thank you. And then I got one more. No, that was it. I just want to be able to share if I am growing, I want to be able to share it with whoever needs it without the fear of losing my license that I'm going to pay somewhere between $60,000 and $200,000 for. That's a lot of money. Okay, bye.
Thank you, Matt. We have 2 more speakers, and then we'll take a brief break. Leliana Dubois, and then Tara Johnson. Leliana? Sorry.
Hi. First, I want to say thanks for doing all this hard work. I know it's really difficult. I'm here to talk to you from the perspective of a patient. I would just like to explain to you a little bit about my personal regimen and how it affects me, so you can understand what dosing means for cannabis. I have a spinal cord injury. I am technically supposed to be in a wheelchair. I also have an autoimmune disease that is killing me, and I have put non-Hodgkin's in remission. I got up this morning. I used cannabis lotion from my head to my toe, which was probably about 10 milligrams. I also took a THC CBDA tincture, which also was about 10 milligrams. To cure my cancer, I had to take 1 gram of cannabis a day to cure my cancer. I could not eat very much. In fact, I could not eat at all. So I had to take that 1 gram a day and put it in products or eat it alone. So to be able to purchase that in that form is really important to patients. I am a very high functioning person. I have done a lot of advocacy work. I'm on our Human Rights Commission. I also have worked for youth coordination in this area, and I do a lot of, I'm a single mother. My child would be in adoption right now if I was not able to utilize cannabis the way I am. I would not even be able to stand here and talk to you right now. The regulators and most of the farmers don't even really understand the value of this medicine. When you're talking about dosing, you're not even talking about THCA and other forms of this product that aren't even psychoactive, but cure people. Regrow myelin sheaths so we can stand and walk and snowboard. I really would hope that you would take in much more consideration to the medical aspect of this plant, because it seems like a lot of this regulation revolves around making money and the recreational aspect of it, which is what I thought the government was fighting against for so long. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Tara Johnson?
Hi, my name is Tara Johnson. I'm here on behalf of Cali Patco in regards to packaging. I'm just going to read a little blurb. In the recent proposal for medical cannabis regulations in the state of California, canned cannabis has been included as a prohibited form of packaging. Utilizing the technology of hermetically sealed container, a can, with a modified atmosphere is a superior form of packaging. We have been unable to locate the rationale for the prohibition of canning in the explanation section of the proposed regulations. Canning cannabis has shown to be a highly effective packaging solution for the following reasons. Cans are the most recycled food packaging product on the planet. Cans are tamper-proof once they are hermetically sealed by the producers. The product is tamper-resistant until opened by the consumer. Industry standards in canning will ensure quality and consistency of the product. State-required product information is clearly labeled on the cans. Nitrogen and hermetic sealing inhibits growth of mold, bacteria, and microorganisms. Child-safe and senior-friendly resealable lids are now available for cans. Hermetically sealing cannabis in an inert environment provides an extended shelf life, which reduces the need to move product to market quickly. This will help reduce diversion to the black market. Seed to sale tracking is easily integrated. In summary, canning is by far the superior packaging option and should be an industry standard. We look forward to a conversation about how to remove this from the list of prohibited packaging options. I just wanted to show you we do have 2 canning options, one that's child-proof and one that is not. And it also is looks like a can of cat food where you pop the top, which seals the shelf life for several years. Do you mind if I leave these with you? No? Okay, just as an option. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Let's take a brief 5-10 minute break. If you'd like to make an oral comment, please add your name to the list at the back table. And remember that you can also submit your comments in writing. The deadline for...
Thank you, and I appreciate you being here and everything you're trying to do to bring this in alignment with the state. Just a couple of brief things. Distributors are responsible for the destruction of property that is not tax testing. That was the question of what happens to the growers who have plants on a track and trace system and something happens to those plants, whether they go bad, they die, get sick, what happens to them? How are those plants going to be destroyed? Who's going to be responsible for it? Who's going to pay for it? Also, storage and handling. The regs recommend or state that storage and handling needs to be, when samples are picked up, they need to be kept between 0 and 6 degrees Celsius, which is approaching freezing to freezing. There's some issues with freezing cannabis products. A lot of people do that to get trichomes off of the buds themselves. So there's going to be a loss of trichomes, which could lead to a lessened potency during testing. It can also lead to moisture above the 15% level that lab is going to be responsible to make sure product stays below. And it can also lead to mold. Along with moisture, if it sits long enough under the right conditions, with enough moisture, it can mold. So that could be a potential issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. All right, Dr. Rogers.
So I'd like to apologize to the members of the audience for going over. I'm deaf and I have early onset Parkinson's, and I apologize. So these are the points I wanted to make. As a physician, I can get my medical license suspended if I don't explain the risk of taking cannabis to a patient. So if there are warning labels on alcohol and cigarettes, aren't we mandated to put both the risks and benefits on any cannabis product sold? As far as decriminalization, Portugal decriminalized all drugs, cocaine, heroin, and there was a marked decrease in use of all drugs across the board and a decrease in crime rate. One of the big issues with controlled clinical trials are there are none concerning cannabis. This is a big lie. UCSD has done multiple controlled clinical trials involving chronic pain. One of the things that is being done is what level of alcohol causes a patient to be impaired. I think equally important, if not more important, is several institutions, including Stanford, UCSF, UC Davis, who have liberal policies on cannabis research, should have access to actual real cannabis as opposed to the 7% that is grown at the University of Mississippi. And we should coordinate and spearhead that with the NIH so we actually have patients enrolled for cancer treatment, Parkinson's disease, also multiple sclerosis. And I think California has to spearhead that movement. We're way behind other countries such as Israel and Great Britain. And I think unless California takes the lead, we're basically we should be focusing on alcohol as a public safety issue, but you also need a public health physician that's coming out of Stanford, John Hopkins, not these old, fogey, demented public health physicians that are currently around that are 65 or 70. You need somebody on your board that's a public health physician who has a liberal, open-minded view on cannabis. So when you hear that there's no controlled clinical trials on cannabis, that's a big farce. There should be no internal testing of cannabis by retail dispensaries because that's a farce. It should be done by an independent, accredited cannabis testing laboratory with review by the state, such as laboratories and hospitals, which are subject to review by the College of American Pathologist Inspectors. So, as an anatomic and clinical pathologist, I have specialty in toxicology, which covers the field of marijuana testing. You need young people coming out of public health that are more than happy to serve the board.
Thank you, Dr.
And
Richards.
one last thing, and I appreciate your patience. The state, again, should contract with organic farmers, paying them at least $2,000 a pound, eliminate the retail dispensaries, because currently they're charging $6,400 a pound, and what patient can afford that who's on disability and getting $750 a month? What are you going to tell a quadriplegic patient, a multiple sclerosis patient who can't get out of their home? You really need to have control by the state, contracting directly with farmers, and eliminating the greedy, cash hoarding retail dispensary owners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Lemon.
I'm, as I said, on the Human Rights Commission, and you should be amazed at what kind of testimony we've heard in our meetings. We have had people from Game Over, which is the people who are fighting against human trafficking. There is a definite connection between the marijuana industry and human trafficking. I know there are a lot of good people in this room today, but there are bad people out there. There are people who take nice girls and turn them into prostitutes, and they're connected with the marijuana industry. And we've heard this testimony several times in our meetings. We, in Southern Humboldt, terrible things go on down there, and we recently had a meeting in Willow Creek, and a woman came to our meeting and talked about how she advises young women that are coming to Willow Creek looking for jobs in the marijuana business. She tells them that you may have to give sex to the people who hire you. So this is an industry that needs a lot of cleaning up. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Is there anyone in the room that would like to queue up to make an anonymous comment? If you don't want to provide your name, add it to the list. Anyone? Yeah, come forward, please. Hi.
Hi, I don't need to be anonymous. I was just debating whether I wanted to give verbal comments or just in writing. My name's Mary Eigner. I run a very small dispensary in the town of Mendocino. And I think as I read over the regulations, you know, I know you guys have done a really, a lot of work trying to regulate this industry that's been in existence for, going on 50 years here. And the main thing that I see is that there's a big disconnect between what's happening in the large urban areas, in the Central Valley, in Los Angeles, in San Jose, and places like that, and in the small rural areas of Northern California. And the people around here are the people who really started this industry, and is why we're kind of having these conversations and debates right now. So I just want to encourage you to really look at those economies of scale. When I read through the regulations, I see incredible barriers for the people who want to come into compliance and be a part of this process, and their ability to do so both on a regulatory and on a financial level. So I really want to encourage you to realize that one size does not fit all for the state of California, and to really make those kinds of abilities for people who want to come into compliance. Trust me, there's going to be plenty of people who are going to stay in the illegal market, but don't prevent those of us who are those people who want to be part of the regulated market from doing so by overburdensome regulation. A couple of small, for instances. For my dispensary, to have a security guard there could possibly cause me to lose my lease because the local business owners in my neighborhood would find that as a barrier to their business, and they would not like that. I think as far as security matters, you should really leave that up to local law enforcement. They know their local communities, and they know what's appropriate for that. Also, I'll submit more comments in writing, but the woman who spoke about dosage requirements for patients, that's really, really important. And again, you can't do a one-size-fits-all. I know you're concerned about edibles and things like that, and that can be worked out. But to say that nothing can be more than 100 milligrams in 10 milligram doses. Patients are very educated. They know what's appropriate. We do want to prevent children from getting access to things, pets from getting access to things, but also we do need to make sure that patients who truly need this medicine can get it in a dosage that's appropriate for them. One other thing I want you to really consider is the prohibition on manufacturing facilities subleasing parts of their facility to others, because I think if you can have something set up especially for small manufacturers where they can come together and pool their resources and have a facility that's compliant, that's really going to enable small producers to continue and also bring new small producers into the industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to queue up and make a comment? Sequoia? Oh, okay.
Hi, Sequoia Hudson. I did just have a couple other little comments. One of them actually was touching on what the woman just talked about a moment ago about subleasing. There's been a lot of discussion and fears about, I think people are interpreting it different ways, so I think there should be some education or clarification on what that means. I think people don't understand what defined premise means, and they think that it just means there's no subleasing on a parcel, and they don't understand that, well, when you're applying for a permit, that you need to clearly define your premise, and that could be any portion of a parcel, not necessarily, I guess, basically that it does allow for multiple applicants on a parcel as long as your separate premises are defined. So clarification on that. And I did want to talk a little bit about 8305E that talks about deeming cannabis waste and the process of doing that. And there's a little confusion around on-site disposal or on-site, what's the word, composting, and whether you have to go through all those processes if you're composting on site. It seemed to be addressing what you needed to do before was to leave the site to go to another facility, not necessarily if you were doing the on-site composting. So if there could be some clarification around that. I think that was it.
Thank you, Sequoia. We have Sean Trainer, Rob Golightly, and then Suzanne Mays.
Oh, thank you again. Yeah, I really wanted to move into that realm now of, you know, we're in Northern California. There are a lot of small business people up here struggling, trying to figure all this out. We can't expect them to become IT and regulatory experts. So there are several bodies working to help in that regard. But let's look at a facility that maybe a cooperative or a grower group could come together on in a parcel that may be deemed industrial in an agricultural area that allows the processing center to take place, where cultivators, other licensees can come and patronize their product. All the track and trace, seed to sale programs could be put in place. The aggregated data and the checks can be sent to the different bodies in Sacramento or the local area. But what we have is we have a distribution problem. Right now, you give us no avenue for distribution. Right now, the distributors are holding all of these cultivators up here hostage. They walk on your property, they offer you the money. If you don't like it, they leave. And they dictate the value of the product, and they're not going to LA, and they're not selling their products like they need to be sold. We need an avenue in this distribution model where these guys can come together. This facility can provide the manufacturers that have their license, provide them safe operated facilities on a parcel in their own premise. We can provide the processing side. We can provide the grading and certification. We can provide the cultivation and tax collecting. All these entities are possible, but we have to work together in this environment because we don't have Silicon Valley here funding everything. And so when we look at this, the testing that we're going to talk about later this afternoon is geared strictly for the product going to market. But what is not being put in place here is the cultivator has no ability to test his product as it's moving through the cultivation stage. So if this product is ready to be tested before it goes into the dispensary, it comes up bad, and all these operations have to take place. Well, this cultivator is already in the second round of his next harvest, right? He's already in there, so he's already lost all of that, and possibly the same cultivation is happening on the product that's going to create the same bad test. So we even wish that in this testing model that we're allowed in a facility like this to provide the cultivators the ability to test their product as it's moving through its growing stage before it gets there, because that's what a cultivator needs. A distributor and the dispensary, they need the last certified body. But right now, that's not an option for the farmer to know what the heck is going on beforehand. And certainly e-commerce would help this type of situation because these guys don't have dispensaries. So e-commerce could help out a lot. So we'd like to have you put e-commerce into the medicinal side of the regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Rob. And then we have Suzanne and Nicole.
Hi, my name is Rob Golightly. I'm representative from Humboldt County Normal. I'd like to first thank you guys for listening to us throughout the pre-regulatory meetings. I feel like a lot of things that were brought up in the pre-regulatory meetings were dealt with in regulations.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
One of the things definitely that wasn't dealt with in the pre-regulations was the limit sizes for edibles. I don't have the section number in front of me, but the 100 milligram edible size per package was not going to work. You know, kids with epilepsy take way more than 100 milligrams per dose. They're taking sometimes 5,000 milligrams a day per dose. And so 100 milligrams just is not, will not work for a lot of patients. A couple things I'd like to appreciate, the 50-20 and 50-22, I think, will give us some guidance for people that don't have a lot of records showing their good standing. 5098B, the 10-pound limit on testing should be abolished. We should be able to do as much as a testing facility feels like they should be able to hold. If they can hold 100 pounds at a time, that's going to help a lot of people and make it a lot cheaper to have so many different times. 5110, employee requirements. Expertise is going to be needed for distributors. Distributors are not going to know everything that the cultivators and the dispensaries know already. So leaving all the power up to the distributors to figure out the product and how the flowers are and where they should go. The growers still have a lot of knowledge and experience in doing that, and to just hand that over and exclude us from being a part of it, that gives them, like the last gentleman was talking about, too much power over us. Then the last thing, the 600 plus pages of different budget reports that were attached to these things. The budget reports are way off. All the price per average that you guys have is easily $1,000, almost double what the realistic average is at the clinics today. And so to base all these prices off of data that was probably taken over 2 years ago is not going to be sufficient for where the price market is and where the price market is going. Obviously, $500, $800 a pound is probably going to come soon. And so we're building these regulations based off of pricing and information that was collected 2 years ago, because the market has changed ever since you guys announced that MRSA was happening. There's been a major flood from the cultivation side, a big fear thinking that this is all going to go away. And so there's been twice as much products accessible to the market since MRSA started. In order to trap and stop black market, we're going to have to deal with some of these legacy cultivators first, so that we trap the amount of product that's already available.
Thank you, Rob.
I guess that's it.
Thank you. Suzanne.
Good morning, I'm Suzanne Mays. I have basically 3 issues, and I'll address them by number. The first one being 5084, no consignment. It currently reads, once medical cannabis goods are received by a dispensary, a distributor shall not maintain title after transfer of the medical cannabis goods to the dispensary. I would like to have that replaced by wording such as, once medical cannabis goods are received by any licensed cannabis entity, title of transfer will be transferred upon receipt of product. I understand that with transport that might be a little bit difficult, but by using this wording it would allow the farmers to also be included under this definition of no consignment. The second item is 5004, parentheses 3, A, B, and C. This is regarding ownership. It currently reads, an individual that will be participating in the direction, control, or management of the license of commercial cannabis business. It goes on much more in detail, but I would like to have all of this replaced, or not replaced, actually just stricken. And the reason for this is the designation is really very too broad. An employee who is a hiring manager does not have the equivalent role and responsibility of an owner. A salesperson working on sales contracts does not have the equivalent role and responsibility of an owner. A farmhand making operational policy decisions on a property does not have the role and responsibility of an owner. Assuming them to have all levels of responsibility and accountability is just unjust and unreasonable. And lastly, this actually is 2, it's 5,000 under definition, F, and 5187 delivery. This is the area which covers delivery. And with delivery, it seems that maybe this organization want to take a closer look. I know that you've probably already received a lot of feedback, but the definition of a delivery is an employee of a licensed dispensary, and I think therein lies a bit of a problem. Those successful businesses who are currently having a delivery-only business, they create, I think, a very good model in this system in that it doesn't create a public nuisance by having a storefront. These folks make medication very accessible to patients who otherwise may not be able to have access. It's brought to their home, signed for, delivered by, hopefully, what will be a licensed entity in this new structure. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Nicole.
Hi, I'm Nicole Almond with Ag Dynamics. There's some language in here that's a little bit concerning. I have to back Suzanne up on the ownership with, as far as the direction and control or management, because most of these folks are employees and not owners. So there's a very distinct difference there. Also, with the priority licensing, it says that people will get priority application review if they were in good standing with local jurisdiction by January 1st of 2016. The last CARF, which was their activity registration form, at least for our county, was August 23rd of 2016. So that could, put people not in that jurisdiction. But anyways, as far as the ownership too, that's also, there needs to be some clarification on that, because whatever people put on the CARF, it could be different as far as what they put in on the applications towards the end of the year to meet the deadline, which could be whether it changed hands due to management or there were LLCs that were set up and such. The other thing too is that it says the continued operations while application is pending, that the business is compliant with local ordinances. The whole point of people going through this process is to come into compliance, in which these folks are being granted a certain amount of years to do that. So I don't know how you would differentiate between that. Also, that the business has submitted an application to the Bureau by July 2nd. As far as each county goes, it's going to really depend on when the counties fulfill their duty in going through the review process. So I don't know if each county is going to be able to meet that July 2nd deadline either. And the other thing too is that the business was in operation prior to January 2nd. There are folks who applied for a new application, even though they were pre-existing, to qualify for a higher square footage. And that pre-existing can be documented, but that needs to be taken into consideration as well, because once you start asking these farmers to halt their production, there's a potential for them to completely go out of business. A lot of these farmers, they are micro farmers, and they can't afford even to take off a year of production. So if that can be somehow taken into consideration also would be awesome. And also the concern is the security requirements, same thing for the micro farmers. It's just not really feasible. I look at these security requirements and all I think are these big mega grows where they can afford to put all those security implements into place. So maybe there's a way to differentiate between the micro and the macro when it comes to security. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. So we have 2 more speakers on the list, and then if you'd like to make an anonymous comment, please feel free to queue up after. We have Tisha Machete and Kelly Flores.
Oh. Sorry, I didn't sign. Can I do a public comment?
Yes, you may.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just got here late. Bill Burton, the Trinity County Supervisor. I only have 3 basic things that I would like to see. The canopy area need not be the work site area. In other words, the canopy area is just the canopy area of the plants, and bigger areas where the work goes on, where there's permaculture going on, and other items should not be limited under that canopy area. So spacing for air and equipment or permaculture needs to be allowed in this working area for good, clean material to be made. Okay, the second item, I believe that there's no need for the website cameras in the grow areas. And then the third item is transportation with the farmer into the market needs to be allowed. The farmers would rather have their product moved by themselves and not some strange security truck or something like that under the track and trace or whatever, having to do that movement on these remote locations. So 3 basic things that I'd really like to see, and it would help out the industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing your clipboard reminds me that 4 of our clipboards have walked away. I'm not accusing you, but if you've accidentally walked away with a clipboard from the table, you can return it. Okay, Tisha Machete and then Kelly Flores. Hi, Tisha.
Hello there, good afternoon. Tisha Machete with Ag Dynamics. Nicole, my operations manager, just got up and spoke. I wanted to clarify a couple of things that she was concerned about. Essentially, we're a compliance management firm, and so we're going through the permitting, and we will be assisting folks with the licensing process. And so I just want to start out by pointing to the fact that California's state licensing process traditionally has been very onerous for many different business types. And we are looking at a very juvenile industry here, so we need to kind of consider those things and making it possible for people to obtain these licenses, which can take 6 months to a year just to even figure out how to navigate the hoops. A couple things that I wanted to point out in reference to Nicole's concerns were the continued operations while application is pending. One thing that she had left out there was for these new operations who will not be able to operate until they receive their permit, they're not going to be able to meet this January 2nd deadline, and your continued operations does require all of the following. In addition to that, the compliance with local ordinances. So we have, health, building, safety code ordinances on the local level, and yes, we have time to address these things under at least our county's provisions. Other counties may require full compliance before the issuance of the permit. The priority licensing, the good standing is still in question. What does this mean? I mean, is the state going to accept some form of pre-registrative acknowledgement that this individual was in good standing? What does that look like? So we really need clarification from the state on that. I know at least in Humboldt County, They are pushing to try to offer provisional permits, which hopefully would address that. But for the instance of people who can't deem all of these date requirements, it's going to be very difficult for them to enter into this. The ownership section is a big issue here, as well as in the CDFA regs. The management, I won't go too far into it because I know it's been iterated a few times, but management companies offer a lot of services to these individuals, and to require management companies to submit their fingerprints to the state in order for an individual to obtain licensing is really a little bit too burdensome. In addition to that, if they've changed their management or they've reassigned responsibilities to a management company after this threshold date, that's an issue as well. So there's a conflict there. I'm just going to run down some bullet points real quick. The testing is pretty onerous. The batches are too small. The requirement to submit to the state offenses over $300 is a little bit much. So maybe defining which types of offenses would be required for that. If it's like a speeding ticket, really, does the state care about a speeding ticket? Transportation concerns for farmers to processing, manufacturing, distribution. Transfer of interest in licensing. We have changes in business organizations, so that will be an issue.
Thank you, Tisha.
Thanks.
Kelly Flores, then Dee Dee, did you want to make an oral comment? Okay, and Dee Dee. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for your time today. My name is Kelly. I'm with Margaret Advisors. We're providing compliance assistance to farmers in the Humboldt area, as well as other businesses that are looking to get permitted at the state level. So we have some concerns. As was mentioned, the ownership definition specified in section 5004, item 3, A, B, and C, specifies one or more of the following and includes hiring an employee, purchase or sale of goods, as well as policy decisions for operations. It's pretty clear that someone like an office manager does not have the same role as an owner. Someone who is managing sales contracts, such as sales manager, has different responsibility than an owner. So for example, the owner has a responsibility to buy and sell the entire business. So that would be a better designation in terms of that role of responsibility. So it's far too broad. We believe it should be stricken, and the 20% ownership be the requirement. In section 128, you talk about the security requirements. We do believe that that's going to be very difficult for people to comply with immediately. We ask that there be a significant implementation period or grace period allowed as people work to comply in the process at the state level. Section 5102 regards to remediation. Since there are so many players in this process, the opportunity for human error is highly likely. So issues such as labeling errors or potency corrections that are needed with manufactured products, there should be allowed to be returned and remediated in consideration and for common sense. Section 5039C, a path to transfer, especially if you go with these types of ownership designations. There, in any emerging market, there's a high incidence of turnover in business, and so there is a need to allow improvements in transferring of licenses. If there is no change, significant change in the business, there should be allowed a path to transfer. And lastly, section 5187C regarding delivery. The dispensaries should be allowed to contract mobile transport services because they provide a higher scale of efficiency, especially in home delivery, which is very common in the medical market. And as long as those transport services are licensed, they should be allowed to provide that service to dispensaries and create the efficiency of the scale. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Kelly. Dee Dee Davis. And then if anyone who would like to provide an anonymous comment wants to queue up, now is a good time.
I'm grateful for the chance to give input, and thank you so much for listening and incorporating our ideas. I have a couple of general comments first. and I'm specifically addressing manufacturing. And one of them is the priority review process under section 40141, which states that a company that has been in good standing and operating before January 1, 2016 could be considered for priority review. And I'm sure there are others in similar situations as myself in which we have been operating I've been operating this manufacturer since March of 2015. I did get a license locally, but was advised by my lawyer not to disclose that it was cannabis because they would not probably give it to me. So I told them it was topical products for the health and wellness industry, and I've been paying taxes for 2 years, sales taxes in the county. And so I do qualify for having done this before January 1, 2016. I would like to say, please also consider whether you're going to consider a company for priority review if they've been paying taxes, because I think that's a big piece. Another is the batch production record 40264. Detail is really excessively burdensome. In my opinion, it needs to be reviewed and consolidated because there's just unbelievable detail in that section. And then just specifically regarding topicals, because that's what I manufacture, versus topicals being classified with edibles, just a couple quick comments. For one, topicals aren't edible. And two, typically topicals are not psychoactive. So when you have a requirement like, well, for instance, dosage under 40305, I certainly understand why you'd want to have an edible pre-cut to a 10 milligram or less dosage, but it's a little hard to determine exactly what is the best amount of dosage for a topical, because it depends really on the area being treated, whether it's a tiny spot or your whole back. So you're going to use different amounts. So that's one question. Another is labeling 40408, not intoxicating and does not impair, so I'm not sure that that applies to topicals. And finally, 40410, not stating medical benefits. I don't want to make health claims, and I certainly understand that's truly important, but on the other hand, patients need to be able to look at a label and say, why should I pick up this product? What is it good for? So some guidance regarding the benefits.
Thank you. Thank you, Dee Dee. Okay, I think we'll take a quick break and then we'll reconvene. Okay, yep.
And you should open it up to anybody else that wants to comment.
Yeah, we have.
While I go over, you should read that sign up there. It says that you will succeed only if you fail. I think you failed. This thing has a bunch of reserved comments, or what you call reserved, okay? So therefore, this is an incomplete document. You're presenting us with an incomplete document that I can't make comments on reserved parts and sections of your whole thing. There's way too many of them. Now, as far as good standing, 1% of this county is in good standing. 5% is possible to be in good standing. Check the numbers. We're never going to get there. Nobody's going to want to participate in your organization or, you know, the county's organization trying to organize us growers. The third is you are creating barriers to business with some of these regulations, just like the dosing that just, you know, was created, we talked about just a minute ago. I counted there's 15 different costs that are prohibitive for businesses. We live up in the mountains. There's no Wi-Fi, there's no electricity, there's no video cameras and all the security concerns. None of that's going to happen. We already have security in place, and you need to talk to us about how we conduct business, because we started this business. You have to remember that we started this, and we're going to finish this business, whether or not you guys exist or not. 90% of the growers, 99% of the growers out there are not in with you. So you better realize that you need to change this document in order to allow people to come into compliance. That's what our county is working on, having people come into compliance, not setting barriers, and not saying, you know, if you quit growing for 30 days, we're in a seasonal business. 30 days, you're out. You've withdrawn our license if you don't conduct business every 30 days. Who thought of that one?
Thank you. Okay, I think we're gonna take a quick break for now, and we'll reconvene in 10 minutes. Thank you.
And I really appreciate the flexibility and the attempt to be inclusive and use various types of proof. But a lot of people, especially in Mendocino County where I am, have had to change different types of entities multiple times or premises because of environmentally superior locations. And sometimes, if they've had to do both, they wouldn't be eligible under that second half of the equation for priority standing. So I'm wondering if there's a way to refine it so that the definition of whose business ownership is the same as it was in 2001-116 is to include the same persons even if they've changed entity form, or at least the core persons if some people have dropped off. There's a lot of combining and recombining, especially in an effort to afford to undertake all of these compliance measures. So if there's some way to refine that so that people who are having to move properties to environmentally superior properties and have had to reorganize, but are still the same people who have engaged in the activity, and maybe not every single one of them, but a good portion of them, if they could qualify somehow, that would be excellent. And I think the easiest way is to allow an entity that are the same people, even if it has a different name or if it's incorporated in a different fashion, to constitute the same business ownership. Next, for actively conducting activity 5022B, it talks about as authorized by the local jurisdiction, and many local jurisdictions at the time did not authorize anything. Of course, that's the dilemma. And while there's wonderful provisions that are trying to give local jurisdictions a way to not just give a permit as proof of having operated, but other authorization, and I really appreciate that flexibility. If we could go one step further and allow jurisdictions who might not be comfortable with saying the person was operating lawfully at that time, but rather the negative, that they were not in violation of any local rule at the time. And that would go a long way to allow local jurisdictions to provide the proof that for legitimate people who have really been operating, but we're in jurisdictions where there was no mechanism and they don't feel comfortable retroactively saying, oh yeah, you were in good standing, because they had no mechanism at the time. And so if we could at least add a section that says they were not in violation, and that could constitute good standing if the local jurisdiction allowed. Thank you so much for the
Hannah.
initiative.
Barron. Ms. Barron. There you are. Hi.
Hello. Thanks for this opportunity. I would like to address the fact that there needs to be some sort of regulation put in place where farmers and manufacturers can go directly to patients through an e-commerce and current logistical framework set up, because that's the only way that we'll be able to kind of keep medicine prices affordable for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to make a comment? Yeah, please go ahead and queue up now. Go ahead.
What I think should have taken place before these regulations is the state should have educated the state on the effects of this plant, what this plant does. You start out by regulating it, and none of you uses it, grows it, deals with it in any way. And you come to us who have that. It's like a parent trying to direct a kid who's been doing something for a long time, so you can't do that anymore. But Mom, I've been doing this, and look at me, I'm still alive, look at this. You need to know what you're dealing with. And you don't. You come to us and we give you comments, and you never answer. You answer by making decisions. You need to know what you're dealing with. You need to educate the whole state so you get rid of this stigma. You got to tell us, well, how can you do that? You're part of the government. You got to say that the government's been lying to us for years. The police have been arresting us for years when we've been legitimately growing the plant at our 215. The state never protected us at all from the enforcement that was illegally arresting us when we were complying with 215. You need to educate the state on what this plant is. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we have a couple more folks who'd like to make a oral comment on the record.
Thank you again, Tisha Machete. I just wanted to finish talking on some of these points that are of concern. I left off with the transfer of interest in licensing. Obviously an inherent concern with people transferring from a not-for-profit to an LLC. I know that that's a common practice in licensing, but it's going to make it very onerous for people. Allowing destruction of product on site. I'm a little unclear on this. Maybe this was addressed, but I think there needs to be an implicit allowance for that and some preliminary testing. Leading into that, also requiring distributors to destroy the product is a little bit problematic for particular products, pesticides maybe that are fit for consumption. So maybe those products could be reassigned to a different marketplace at that point rather than destroyed. Commingling restriction, this is very unreasonable. We don't see this in ag. People should be allowed to commingle their product, and regardless of the batch size, whatever we end up settling in on, 10 pounds not being enough, but there should be allowance for commingling because we have different grades of the product that often need to be commingled in order to provide an equally distributed pound, or whatever that case may be. License bonding versus destruction bonding. I saw this $5,000 bonding, and I don't know if it's also iterated in the BMC regs. CDFA had a license bonding requirement of $25,000, so we need to clarify that so we know ahead of time what we need to do. There's also some insurance barriers that need to be overcome in order to be able to provide the bonding for those license types. Consideration for beneficial mycos. I know that this is your next session, but not restricting people for beneficials. But I don't think we have quite enough research yet to determine which beneficial mycological presence would, what those particular mycos would look like. Edible language restriction on perishable foods. This is going to cut out opportunity for, home prep meals, things like that. So for individuals who maybe are receiving product delivered to them in the form of actual food, that would be an issue. I think we should just adhere to the traditional standards that we have for temperature thresholds and shelf life thresholds. No processing and cultivation combinations. This should not be the state's authority to decide this. This should be purely a land use related instance. And let the counties and the cities determine what's going to be appropriate on certain zones. And in Sonoma County, they've centralized everything to the city predominantly. And so we're going to see a lot of dual use situations on certain zones where they're trying to consolidate so they can better manage and inspect the marketplace. The subleasing issues was brought up. There's a question right now in terms of licensees being able to obtain permits and sublease out, and maybe they're concerned that the leasehold would not be able to meet all the conformance, and so maybe they want to take responsibility for that. So please consider subleasing as an option for license types. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Hello, David Bridge, West Coast Research. So I'm gonna talk about testing in a minute, but I wanted to talk about a couple of things Tisha said. First, with regard to microbiology, Oregon uses water activity level rather than using microbiology specifically. I don't know if that's something you guys have considered or what the stance in that is, but that would have a lot to do with shelf life considerations. Different water activity levels necessitate different ways to be able to take care of that food item. You know, grains, dry, don't have a refrigeration requirement, etc. The commingling, there are hashishans around the world that blend both hash and cannabis based on grade. It's a connoisseur sort of thing at the same time, and some places it's not. Might be something to consider, a way to do that, and to add that into the track and trace so that someone can blend it to make that more connoisseur or differentiate in some way. Also, with regard to destruction, guidance should be given to Rececology or to the local trash companies on how to deal with that. I know that we've had issues as a laboratory getting our waste dealt with, and you know, part of that is a federal thing, part of it is not. So there needs to be a way to deal with that. For DUI issues, I use cannabis as a topical and I eat it, and that has a much different effect on your body. It tends to be metabolized differently depending on how you take it in. A 5 nanogram limit, which is what happened in Colorado, ends up being pejorative against people who actually use the product. Anybody who uses it on a recurring basis is going to have more than 5 nanograms in their body. And it's not a static thing, it continues over time. So if you smoke, it's going to be in your system for more than what would be acute for impairment in some way for driving. So that should be taken into account as well. And I had one question with regards to Prop 64. Is there a way for legal Prop 64 cultivation to be included in this industry? If you're allowed to grow 6 plants for Prop 64, you do a DEP, you can get 30 plants in a year. You know, if you're doing anywhere near decent, you can get a pound a plant. You can get up to 5 or 10 pounds. So that's 30 pounds minimum into the system that could be taxed, could be done by anyone. Is there a way to do that in the system currently? And if not, that should be a way, there should be a way for those individuals to, as a cottage industry or some other way, enter into the industry with the legal 6 plants that they're allowed to do. So thank you for your time. I'll be back.
Thank you.
Right. Let's say it's 2:15.
Hey, one last thing. We were talking about transportation and how it relates to the cultivator, and I think one thing that should be considered is not to reinvent the wheel with this. There's already established norms, but there's like handoff liability, and using bulk trucks or multiple farms could go to one truck and ship to a further distance, versus I've heard talk of armored cars and all kinds of crazy regulations with this. These trucking companies would have established norms, and then as far as just being a small farmer, getting your plant to market, like if you're going to a local dispensary or a local distributor, that should be an option. And I think the same with security. I understand that this is like a scary new industry and you guys really want to protect people. But I think there's being so much emphasis put on regulating or over-regulating it. It's being like, it's putting farmers out of business, and if you look at a model for an already existing business, most of it's already there. And I just ask you guys to consider that, you know, when you move forward.
Thank you. Anyone else like to provide a comment?
Hi, I have a sheet I'm going to turn in as well. My name is Nathaniel Pennington, and I'm CEO of a small business, Sustainable Medicinals, currently doing business as Humboldt Seed Company. And I really would like to thank you guys and applaud the efforts for especially coming all the way up to Eureka and hearing all these comments. I have some concerns that I'm sharing in writing, but just in general, after living in Humboldt County for about 25 years, I am a little bit concerned about this shift in the paradigm of the industry here in the county. And I see that a lot of steps have been taken in the regulation process that should be helpful in protecting these little kind of backwoods communities. But I think one thing that's important to remember is that in the far north of California, we have drug epidemics that are really tearing our community apart. And a lot of that can pretty easily be tied to lack of job opportunities, lack of economy, and a concern that I see is that if we don't really try to make sure that this craft cannabis and medicine industry that has been here existing, whether it's been for right or wrong, it's here and it's a reality, and I know California's been aware of it. And so let's just do all we can to make sure that the transition provides local employment, provides for small businesses, and that we don't, have such an upheaval that we end up having, just more economic depression in, a small town like Eureka. There's a lot of homelessness, there's a lot of, really hard drug problems. And so anyways, I just thank you guys for coming all the way out here, and it seems like you're already kind of on the same page with what I was just saying, but remember us small towns. I know Lori kind of reiterated that earlier, so thank you guys.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Hi, my apologies. First of all, I'm not good at public speaking. My name's Todd Cernick. Thank you all for being here in the consideration of the community and the state, and thanks for everybody else trekking up here. I've been hearing over and over, I've been here today and in the past, small micro farmers that have the ability to meet legislative requirements and all the aspects of regulation, except for the high financial cost of licensing. And piggybacking on the gentleman's comments that just spoke earlier, besides the state wanting to oversee and regulate the industry, understandably, for safety, et cetera, the other big aspect, obviously, is revenue, tax revenue. To help these micro farmers and small farmers, is there any consideration from the state to help facilitate the financial burden by deferring licensing payments, by financing those payments? Because if you've got good people in the community helping people in need, keeping other people employed and off the streets, wouldn't it be in the best interest of this state to help overcome that last financial burden, or that last burden being finances? Because the more farmers you have licensed, the more tax revenue you have as well, the more people to keep off the streets. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. For anyone else? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hi, Don Ashley with Humboldt Botanical. I would just like to say at the end of the distribution, I'm here for the lab testing, but as far as distribution goes, I beg you to think about what it means to have any group like the Teamsters or any of these people in the middle of the pipeline of this. All you have to do, go back as far as you want and look at the Teamsters as a group and an organization, and then say, we have this industry of cannabis, and we're gonna put those two together. It's common sense. It's common sense from a distribution level of anything with this product, or it's the key to the business. If you can't distribute, this is a branding, marketing business now. That's what this industry is. These small farmers and these cultivators are gonna have to grow a brand for themselves to sustain. You have 100, 200,000 square foot indoor grows. These are artisan growers. If you then take the ability to bring your product to market the way it should be, and not into a mass consumption situation, they can't sustain themselves. Most of the people can't even understand what you guys are delivering as far as information, let alone run a regulatory business. So it's a task of epic proportion on your side, but you just have to, there's gotta be some common sense with the obvious things. And the obvious thing is Teamsters don't go with cannabis distribution.
That's great. We have a little over 5 minutes. Yeah, if you'd like to make a comment, please come forward.
Hi, my name is Josh West, and I'm here to comment on the cannabis waste side of it. I'm estimating 700 to 1.2 million pounds of cannabis waste being created just from cannabis stalks, not the flowers or chlorophyll, and this is from research projects that have been done here at our local fiber. We have outsourcing of our Northern California's waste management. It ships down to Sacramento and then ships to Nevada. So to be shipping millions of pounds of usable material that is going to be mixed by 50% or more of things, there is an opportunity here to, within the rules of regulations, it says it cannot be sold after as waste management or as waste. If we were able to sell the cannabis stalks or the bast, the fiber on side of it, you could then go into value-added opportunities for local education, local economic development. You would be able to reduce the transportation through the very fragile freeway system we have up here and facilitate a big opening for new opportunities in many rural areas, as well as the lessening of environmental impact for the industry and itself a educational opportunity for the world to see. I'm going to be presenting information to the Eureka Energy Committee on this on the 5th, and we have a very clear path of infusing this into the education system within Eureka as well as Del Norte County. So the creation of, say, plastics with this cannabis fiber, high THC that is not hemp, we could move very quickly into a very tangible and non-diversion capable way of using this waste material, because they're written so in the reasons to be as such for avoiding diversion. If we can secure the product, guarantee no diversion, while helping economic, environment, and transportation needs, I think there's a win-win to be had. So thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brad. I do not live here. I live in Los Angeles, and I run the Medical Marijuana Relief Center. I wasn't even planning on coming here today. I just wanted to come and see what's going on because I'm here to see some of my suppliers. I haven't heard anything about the patients. All I care about is my patients. I have over 100,000 patients, and I let them have medical marijuana from professional growers. I don't know who these people are, distributors, testers, I don't give a crap. I want my patients to get the best medicine for the lowest price I can get that to them. All this nickel and diamond stuff, all these regulations, adds the price to the patient only and the farmer only. Everyone in the middle, I don't care about. You guys care about. I care about my patients, I care about my farmers. Anybody else, you guys can just do what you need to do. I will follow your rules, but one day, it's gonna just blow up. I don't know why. Like, you guys just keep adding on regulation, 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 and we follow it. We're all following it. Help us out, please.
Thank you. Okay, we have 5 more minutes. If you'd like to make a comment, please queue up. Go ahead.
I wanted to give you another example, but this from the farmer to the product example. I am also going into cannabis legitimate business and developing a cosmetic line. And when I look at our permitting numbers, I can't do that. I can't create a product with 100 farms. I can't build a business on 100 farms. Now, when I talk about that as a patient, I can't go and buy my THC in my juice at high volume so I can take it every day with 100 farms. You can't supply the demand with 100 farms. I know there's a lot more farms outside of Humboldt County, But when you're talking about sustaining a community and sustaining an economy, you have to have the product. And with all the costs, I want regulations. As a patient, I've had a gun to my head and I've been blackmailed. That's why I fought for the regulations. But now we're talking about putting the consumer at risk because of all the regulations, where they're no longer going to get access to clean medicine or products that are able to go through the testing because of the volume, or they're able to repetitively buy a product that will heal them. When I go to buy something to cure me, I want to know it's going to do that the same time. I need to be able to go back to that same farm for that same medicine. And if we only have 100 farms, where are all those pills coming from? Where are all those joints coming from? And where is all this medicine coming from? Thank you.
Thank you. We only have a couple more minutes.
Really quickly, so just wanted to come in support of what Josh was saying, is sustainable waste programs. So we'd like to suggest that the Bureau and their sister agencies consider allowing people to petition to participate in sustainable waste programs to deal with the discard and reduce the amount of non-usable waste. The other thing is we wanted to also speak up in support